If Donald Trump is to blame for being in denial about this COVID crisis, for refusing masks, health supplies, and guidance from the WHO in the late 2019, or for pushing the CDC austerity and eliminating pandemic disaster preparedness planning, and if the GOP governors who take their cues from the president are just as negligent for refusing to shut down beaches and institute stay-at-home orders far into the evidentiary phase of this crisis, if they're to blame, where does the buck stop? Just 2 weeks ago, DNC Chairman Tom Perez willfully ignored scientists and the CDC's own advisory to ban social gatherings of over 10 people. Perez advised Democratic voters to listen to their states. So he basically told voters to trust Republican Governor DeSantis of Florida and Republican Governor Ducey of Arizona to show up at the polls during a pandemic. And even though, despite public outrage and pushback, Perez stuck to his plan, and those primaries took place. Just a few days later, the Florida poll workers, few of them, tested positive for COVID-19. By the way, Joe Biden earned 173 delegates in Florida and Arizona. But then on Tuesday of this week, Tom Perez criticized Republican leadership and judges in Wisconsin for putting politics above lives, continuing to hold in-person primaries in the midst of a pandemic. Did Tom Perez suddenly learn his lesson? This week, while everyone is absorbed with COVID, Perez announced the DNC was moving the convention from July to August. And hidden in that story is that Perez decided on this only after speaking with Joe Biden, who pushed for the DNC convention not to be canceled, but to be postponed. Is it that the former vice president and the DNC chair are just that out of touch? Or are their political instincts that inept? Or do they think this is a smart strategy to win the White House? Or is this just something else? Spoiler alert, I've come to the point where I am almost absolutely certain that the Biden campaign and the DNC have no interest in winning in the fall. Why? Well, as always, you gotta follow the money. There is a whole lot of money in opposition politics, in being the anti-Trump Democrats. A few years ago, a clip went viral of me speaking on the DNC's Unity Reform Commission, in which I served. It was from the last meeting as we geared up to vote on important budgetary and conflicts of interest reforms that Dr. Jim Zogby and I had written. And it was after a year of traveling the country, meeting over long weekends, deliberating, and in my case, researching the complicated structure and the finances of the DNC. And in that clip, I referenced a handful of consultants who earned the majority of the $1 billion spent on the 2016 election, between Clinton's presidential campaign, the joint agreement with the DNC, and the Clinton-aligned super PACs. One of the largest consultants, receiving hundreds of millions of dollars, was a firm called SKD Knickerbocker. It's out of New York. Now, a critic might say to me, hold up, Nomi, elections cost money, and someone's got to do that work. Which, okay, sure, is true enough. But consulting isn't known to be the most ethical profession, and many, not all, consultants will prey on candidates who can and have raised money. And more often than not, behind closed doors, there's political horse trading going on between consultants. Some consultants would rather make money off of a campaign than actually fight hard to win that campaign. And oftentimes, the candidates may not even know this. You may remember that the Democrats lost over 1,000 state legislative seats during Obama's tenure in leading the DNC. This is largely because the Democrats pulled funding away from the 50-state strategy that got Democrats the House in 2006. A strategy focused on investing in building a pipeline of candidates, leaders, organizers, and activists across the country. But instead, under Obama's leadership, the money largely moved into solely funding his presidential campaigns, which, let me remind you, have become a billion-dollar business opportunity. And for the establishment, the more national a race, the more expensive ads to buy, the more money to be charged on communications, and less on organizers and door-to-door canvassers. The more to be consolidated towards a couple of big consultants than towards a decentralized, county-by-county model of funding thousands of local people. And SKD Knickerbocker was one of these key firms raking in that money. And they also happen to be working with Vice President Biden. Anita Dunn, one of the partners, who's the D in SKD, is the senior advisor to Joe Biden. You might remember her appearance on TV the night of the last debate at the beginning of the pandemic, when she called Bernie Sanders a protester on stage. This is the same Anita Dunn. This is the same Anita Dunn who made money defending her client, Harvey Weinstein, a huge Democratic Party donor also. But then she also worked with the Hollywood Time's Up legal fund supporting Me Too victims. The same Time's Up that was recently reported to have refused to look into substantiated sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden by Tara Reid, a former staffer to the senator. And another partner at SKD is someone I actually know from my time at CNN and the DNC, Hillary Rosen. You may remember Hillary from her recent tiff with Senator Nina Turner on CNN, when Hillary, a white woman and a Biden consultant, said to Senator Turner, an African-American woman, that she had no standing to interpret Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. Then, even 24 hours later, Hillary Rosen continued this rant on Twitter until it reached embarrassment. She was trending, and she was forced to apologize to Senator Bernie Sanders and to Senator Turner, perhaps for CNN contract. Now, this is a firm that has lobbied for tax breaks for the wealthy, for-profit schools. They've worked with Israeli spy companies, and SKD represents friend of the Nomiki show, Governor Andrew Cuomo. So what does this have to do with the convention? So Joe Biden's campaign has been a magic trick by his media consultants. He barely has volunteers, and I don't think he ever had a field program. It's been bizarrely dependent on mainstream media hyperventilating over his expected win in South Carolina and a lineup of endorsements from lockstep fall-in-line Democrats. Basically, his media consultants constructed a scenario in which the media could get away with saying Biden was the presumed nominee well before the primaries were completed. Like, half the primaries have even cast a vote. So the firm have had their own strategists who happen to be cable news contributors, and the campaign surrogates go on TV and echo this. And then celebrity surrogates echo this on social media and on, when they go on like The View. And poof, Joe Biden's the nominee. And without Biden shaking hands or appearing unscripted on camera. Remember when he disappeared for the first 2 weeks of quarantine? And hopefully, once we get through April, Joe Biden doesn't have to show up to another debate. And the media declares that he has won the nomination with some delegate, strange math projection that requires mental gymnastics. Checkmate. But let's get to the money making, the ad buys, and the convention theatrics with a target that even moderate Republicans enjoy attacking, Donald Trump. The Democratic Convention has been about theatrics since they turned it into a week-long cable news production. Since the vote trading shifted away from being on camera to the proverbial smoke-filled rooms with the senior campaign staff. The truth is that Democrats don't want to lock up the nomination to have a longer runway during the general. They want to lock up the nomination so they can stop wasting money on the primaries and progressives and start making money off of a two-way race against the branded enemy, Donald Trump. But nothing would show us at this point that the Democrats have learned anything from their horrific and historic loss in 2016. They haven't invested more money in field. They've means-tested fund allocation to state parties. They haven't leaned working class or populist. In fact, they've only doubled down on attacking popular policies like Medicare for All and refusing to support rent freezes during the pandemic. No, they have Scranton, Pennsylvania Joe Biden to be their working class mascot, who they can clip up into expensive 30-second ads against madman Donald Trump. Now, if they actually wanted to win, they would skim a bit off of that media budget. Instead of putting resources into buying more expensive ads in states that they think they can turn blue, like Texas, they'd invest in offices and organizers in states we horrifyingly lost in 2016. And actually, there might be enough money to do both. And of course, they continue to ignore and attack the Democratic base. Not just millennials, but the majority of working Democratic voters under 50 years old. 2016 showed us that we cannot take any voters for granted. We have to work for all the votes. But they don't actually win. There's a lot of money to be made in being in opposition to Donald Trump. And if they won, they'd have to answer to the largest, most diverse, and progressive generation in history. And the convention. Non-stop cable news coverage, scripted speeches by all the demos that the Democrats represent, and for show, even those who don't. But pay no attention to the protesters outside, or in the case of 2016, the hundreds of delegates walking out of the convention. We have a 4-star general attacking Trump. We have a Republican woman on stage attacking Trump. We have Michael Bloomberg and DeRay singing Kumbaya. See? We're a big tent. And have I mentioned the Democratic Governors Association's concerts and the Emily's List parties and the sponsorships like the Uber tent outside the convention and the MSNBC brunch? And of course, the sacred convention committee positions. The Democratic National Convention is heaven for lobbyists and corporations and grifters and consultants and fundraisers and Hollywood actors and agents and cable news contributors and, of course, the Twitter influencers. Why on earth would they cancel that? It's also a nonstop ad against Donald Trump. And if you have no actual campaign, this is the moment to raise money from the people and buy more ads. This is the moment you drive up the poll numbers without actually having to spend it on the ground. These high-paid consultants would have to shift their well-thought-out strategies and make way less money by canceling the convention. They can't do that, even if it means risking thousands of lives. Call me crazy. I don't think a convention and ads and ignoring the Democratic Party base in exchange for Bloomberg Republicans will win Biden the election. Call me crazy, but I think that the Democratic Party stakeholders know this too. I think Biden's consultants know. I mean, they're basically phoning it in at this point, right? I think that SKD knows. I think the appointed voting DNC members that SKD works with know. I think SKD's favorite client, Governor Andrew Cuomo, knows. And I think Andrew Cuomo is waging a nice little war against Trump on CNN for the next 4 years, so that he's perfectly situated with the largest DNC delegation coming from New York members who he has picked himself, with the DNC's chosen consultants working with him now, with his propaganda, nightly branding on CNN. With this pandemic, he is perfectly situated for 2024, which is why we cannot take our eyes off the prize, guys. Which is why we have to pay attention to the process, to budget negotiations, to who's on the DNC, how it's structured. We have to work on local races, run for the DNC positions, and support independent media for exposing these things. This fight is only just beginning. It's not the time to give up. Now is the time to focus, to work together in true solidarity, not be divided, not cause petty fights, not get distracted with Twitter fights with crazy people online. The establishment is not inept for losing. They're brilliant in making Trump an enemy. Even during a pandemic, they're putting money above the lives of their voters. They're kicking at the progressives nonstop, and they're giving tax breaks out to the rich. This fight, guys, just beginning.